So, David, would you send me your ordained name so that we can keep track of that?
Yeah, I've sent it already.
Oh, you
Uh,
did? Okay.
yeah, yeah.
What do you prefer to be called? By your ordained name?
No, not really. No one ever calls me by my ordained name. No, you just call me David.
Okay. That's common in Thailand, especially if you knew the monk before he was ordained.
Hmm. Yes, it is.
That in fact is basically only more senior monks that tend to use their ordained name.
Hmm.
And that's especially true if there's some event where the original ordained name is changed.
Hmm.
For example, have you ever heard of the title called Chao Kun?
Chao Kun.
Chao Kun.
It's like the big person or big. I don't know.
Uh-huh,
No.
right. You're hearing the word chow, isn't all right. And so you already know that word. Yes, there is a designation in Thailand of monks. Uh, they are recommended by the Bureau of Religious Affairs and then given a new name by the king. And that over time, there's been somewhere between about 300 to 500 Chalcoons. And they're almost always senior monks. And when they're designated Chalcoon, they almost always go by the local name of Lung Po. And so if you hear the word Lung Po, then you can know that they're designated. And in fact, I'm very pleased to say that Achan Semedo, Achan Amaro, and Achan Pasanto are all now going by Luang Po, which means that they were probably designated as Chao Kun.
Hmm. Luang Pu, like grandfather.
Or uncle, old uncle or grandfather, yes.
Hmm.
And so it's generally quite senior monks, monks that have been ordained more than 20 years, and they'll get a new name. That in
Hmm.
fact I ran across that uh, when Achan Pasanto in Fremont, California, he was given that Chao Kun designation to the great celebration of everybody there. And then I didn't know how to address him because his name was changed and I didn't get a hold of his new name. So I still remember him as Achan Pasanto rather than Luang Paul, I don't know
Hmm.
what. So you were asking a question about merit and merit making.
Right.
Um, do you know the Pali word or the Thai word for that?
Boon or
Yeah,
punya.
Tam
Punya.
Tam Tambun Tambun.
Tambun.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. I hear it
Okay.
at least 100 times a day.
Uh-huh. And what were the words that you were using besides Tambun?
Also like punya, punya.
Punya.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, the word bun, by the way, is a Pali word that has leaked into the European languages, because Pali is an Indo European language. So that word bun is the same thing that we have in English when somebody gets a windfall. They get a bun,
Hmm. Hmm.
okay? Or the word in French, bienvenue, is that same word, and it means good. So
Hmm.
Tom Bun, then in the Thai language, as well as half Pali, is Tom is to make, and bun is to do good. So
Mm.
basically, when we say merit making, the real reality is that it's doing something good, making good.
Mm.
And that's got a lot of reality to it, but there's some magic that's added to that.
Mm-hmm.
This is what the word merit comes into. Like at a school, you get merits and demerits depending upon what sports you play and whether you beat somebody up or cheated on an exam or things like that. You get demerits and merits. All
Mm.
right.
Mm-hmm.
But at a school, that means something because the school administration is keeping track of the demerits. But in this world of Tom Boone, who's keeping track?
Magical karma machine.
Yeah, the magical karma machine. Exactly. You've heard me talk about the karma machine before.
Yeah.
And it's a magical kind of thinking that people have that they're actually, when they do good, they're making merit. And there's a lot of good ways to make merit or to do good. One of them is the Pendabat, is to go
Mm.
feed the monks, to get up early in the morning and go out and give the leftovers or sometimes something special.
Mm-hmm.
Also, there are special days that mean something. For instance, birthdays and Buddha days and holidays, you get extra credit. For
Right.
instance, like a Bhikkhu Buddhadasa or someone who, by the way, on the side point, we were just talking about Chao Kun. Bhikkhu
Mm.
Buddhadasa refused the title
Nice.
when it was given to him. He sent it back, like sending an Oscar back.
That's funny.
Yeah, because he didn't have anything to do with that. But the point that here I'm making is that um, because a special day is a monk's birthday, and if he is a high monk, older monk, designated as Chao Kun or something, or maybe even a Sumdet, then they have the lay people have the magical belief that they're going to get extra credit by feeding the monk on his birthday.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and that became such an issue at Wat Suan Mok many years ago, long before I ordained. It was a big deal, and so Bhikkhu Buddhadasa started fasting on his birthday, and eventually it became Wat wide so that the kitchen was closed. The monks didn't go on bendabat, and nobody was expected to bring food to the Wat
Mm.
because he was trying to cut out that magical thinking of getting extra credit by feeding an important monk on his birthday. Because you can see, feeding any monk, you get credit. Feeding an elderly monk, you get double credit. And feeding the monk on his birthday is triple credit. And so there's other things that people will make merit for or Tom Boone. One of them would be staying at a Wat as a layperson,
Mm-hmm.
that they make merit by doing that.
Mm.
Also, there is the story about within the concept of chauvinism that Thai mothers think that they do a great deal of merit by having their sons ordained. That's why so many young men are pushed into ordaining. Some of them for a short time, some of them
Mm.
for a longer time. The
Mm.
traditional time was 2 years. Now they don't do that so much. But the old tradition is that when the man becomes 18 years old, he does 2 years of military service, and after he gets out of the military, at the age of 20, he ordains for 2 years, and then after he does that, then he is, let us say, educated in how to deal with the world. Not educated in the sense of a computer scientist or a philosopher or an engineer, but educated in the way that he is prime meat for marriage. Because if a man has been a monk for 2 years and been in the military for 2 years, he's pretty well indoctrinated into doing what he's told to do happily.
That's funny.
And so they don't generally, in that regard, those men who have done that 4 year grouping like that, don't drink, they don't beat up their wife, they don't neglect their children, and they do what their mother-in-laws tell them to do.
Mm.
And so then the mom gets her son, she gets all of the Tom Boone, and the mother-in-law gets all of the power. And so this being a matriarchal society here, you can understand why that issue is there. They even call it that the mother rides to heaven on the coattails of her son's robe. That she rides to heaven by latching onto his robe. And generally with that at that ordination ceremony, the mom then is the queen of the show. And she is extraordinarily happy. She actually gets into heaven on the day of his ordination. May not last, but she gets into heaven on that day. So this is what Tom Boone and making merit is all about. And it has two concepts to it. One is the immediate benefit, and then the other one is the magical long-term benefit. Now, sometimes there is long-term benefit that's real. For instance, spending time in the Wat and listening to the monks and practicing anapanasati or meditation or something and getting your mind straightened out and whatnot like that is a great deal of merit. That in fact, part of the situation then is that if a young man will ordain, then he will disrobe later with the thought of, oh, my ordination time will help build up merit so that I'll have a better life the next life, and then I can be a monk longer. Or the rich people have the idea of their Tom Boone is donating a lot of building materials or a lot of money, or if the guy has his own company, then he will put his employees to work part-time at building a temple. So temple building is one of the big ways of making merit. That's when you get more than 10 brownie points if you build a temple. And that's why there are so many temples in Thailand. That I have heard two different figures, or the same figure for two different meanings. One is that there are more than 20,000 Wats in Thailand, but I've also heard that there are 20,000 old Wats that don't even have monks anymore.
Yeah, I heard the same.
And so I don't know which one is which, but I do know that all of that came about from the idea of making merit, or Tom Boone. And so there's other things that people do, generally on a particular holiday, that would be like giving a robe to the monk. And that's at the Katin ceremony. Do you know what a Katin actually is?
You mean katina? I know that word.
Yes, that's the word we're looking for.
Katina ceremony is, what is a katina? It's
what
a robe.
is the katina? No, the katin or the katina is the loom.
The loom.
A loom. Now, not a really fancy, sophisticated loom at a factory where they're making cloth at high speed, but actually in the time of the Buddha, it was basically 4 sticks that were, let's say, lashed together to make a flat surface so that you could tie the cloth down for stitching. because in the time of the Buddha, the keten was actually that the people, after, see, in the old days, cloth didn't last. The robe that you have on is a mixture of cotton and polyester. And because of that, it will last through the rain season. But in the old days, especially in India, where the rains are just ferocious during the monsoon, that the cloth hardly ever dries, that you can wash your clothes and then hang it out. In fact, at Goenka's Center, they had a retreat building, kind of like a meditation hall, except that there was nothing in there but smoke pots and laundry, trying to get it to dry during the monsoon, where it's always raining outside and it was hardly ever getting the cloth to actually dry out. And so in the time of the Buddha, everybody, all the lay people, everybody got new clothes.
Mm.
And then their old clothes were donated to the monks. It's sort of like the old style of goodwill. And so the monks would then take that, the clothing, cut it up, and use the keten to make it a large robe, the Sangati robe.
Hmm.
And so nowadays they have that same ceremony, except that people will buy ready-made store-bought robes that come in a particular kind of package. You've seen them,
Yeah.
right? That in fact they're just like in the United States about guns, that those people who have guns often have a whole bunch of guns. Very rarely does one person have just one gun, that most of the guns are stored up. Okay, so this is what happens with the robes. That in fact, going back to talking about Ajahn Prasert, I saw it there, but I've seen it since then, but it was big time there. They had an entire major collection of robes. There was only about 20 watts at Fremont, California's Watt, but they must have had 500, 1,000 robes. Many of them were years old and never taken out of the plastic covering. They were stored. And on the keten, they would set up a great big table out in the yard, and people would go to buy the robes, donate money. There was no fixed price on it, but people would generally give $20, maybe $100 to buy the robe. Then they would take it in and ceremonially give it to one of the monks, and each monk is sitting there with a pile of robes stacking up beside him, and then one of the lay workers at the Wat would come in behind them. In this particular case, they had windows. And so the guy would come to the window, open the window, and there the monks were sitting there, and they would hand him back all of the robes that they had collected, and he would take them back out to that table to be resold. And everybody was very happy with that situation because the people who were buying the robes were making merit by donating a robe to the monk, right? And so that's one of the industries that happens around. It's very interesting. In fact, you're about to have the keten pretty soon. This is about the time, or has it already happened?
Nope. It's gonna happen maybe 2 weeks. About 2 weeks. November.
All right. Well, keep track of what I'm talking about so that when you get into the keten, you can see some of that stuff happening. That in fact, at your Wat, there's probably a whole lot already, robes already stored, that people don't have to go buy them at the shop and bring them, that they've already donated it last year. It's possible that the robe you donated last year and got all of that mirrored, you donate it again this year and get more credit for that same robe that you gave last year. All right. Go ahead.
We sort of see that here in the Bindabat. We go on Bindabat every weekend, but the food, we don't really eat it. It just it goes to the staff. So it's not really going to the monks. It's just being, and it also goes to the community. we put it back to the community, so it doesn't really go to the monks at all.
Well, that's quite typical. That in fact, you know that Cathal is here on this island, Etowat, and that he comes over here to visit with me. We have a Dhamma lesson. He also is teaching my daughter Kitty English. And every week that he comes, he brings a whole bunch of stuff that the Mechis give him to try to get rid of all the food that they accumulate at the Wat.
Oh,
The
nice.
Thai people are quite generous with the
Yeah.
food. Okay? So when I was at Wat Chulapatan, there was a situation, and I saw this every day. It was quite humorous. And that is that the monks go on Bendabat into this, let us call it a slum area. That at least in this slum area, the streets were, or the avenues were paved, but the storefronts were very small and whatnot like that. And so the people every morning would load the monks down with food, and if someone had a kapow or a layman, they call them two things. One is a luksit, which means he's actually a student, and the other one means he's a kapow or he's just a pocket. And he gets merit by going out with the monks on Bendabat. All right?
Yeah, I did.
So,
I did that. I used to do that.
all right. So, well, look at all the merit you made. Now you're wearing the robe. Okay. So, at this particular Wat, there happened to have been the primary school that all the kids went to from that slum that was right next door to the Wat on this side of the road. On the slum was actually on the other side of the road. It had a divider, but there was ways to get across the road if you mind your traffic. And so the monks would go across the road, and they would bring back huge amounts of stuff that would be put in great big wash tubs. The monks would eat what they wanted to eat, and then all of the leftovers, which was most of the food that was given out, was taken over to the school, and the kids had that for lunch.
Yeah.
That was a built-in lunch program, so that the parents didn't have to go give the food, or the kids have to take the food with them. That the parents gave the food to the monks, and the monks made sure that all of that extra food got into the school. And so it was a free lunch program, kind of, because nobody knows which food that mom fixed, am I getting that same food? There is another technique that goes on like that I've seen, especially in the cities, like in Nonthaburi, where Wat Chulapatan is located. And at that particular time, this guy was 47 years old. And what he did on his 47th birthday was that he took 1 baht coins and made a little bundle of 47 in a bag, a plastic bag, and he got 47 of those bags. So he gave those bags to each one of the monks of 47 monks. Each one of them got a bag of 47 baht. That was a way of him making merit, Tom Boone. Because I was quite surprised to get a little bag of 1 baht coins in my lunch. And that's what it was explained to me, that's one of the ways of making merit. And so that's a traditional way of making merit. Now, the guy probably got a great deal of joy going to the bank and getting 47 squared 1 baht coins and 47 bags, and probably he and his family sat there the night before stuffing all of those coins into these bags, having a celebration. And then he gets the great merit or the great joy of giving each one of these out to the monks. But also underlying that is the mentality that this is storing up credit for a future life. That people make merit. Okay, this comes under the old law of karma of if you do good, you will get good results. If you do bad, you'll get bad results. And so the Tam Bun, or the Tam Bun Maidi, then is kept track of by the karma machine so that people will get credit for the merits that they make. This comes under the old law of karma. Like I said, if you do good, you get good results. Well, do good is the Pali Tam Bun. That's also in the Thai Tam Bun.
Which, isn't that true? If you do good, you will get good results.
Yes. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. If you rob a bank, you're going to be wealthy unless you get caught, and then you're not. So there's really not much of a guarantee, but in the magical world, there's a guarantee that you do good, you'll get good results. There's also the other word, you probably heard this one, Saibat. Do you know what that means?
Football.
Yes, putting in the bowl. Exactly, except that it's not a bowl, it's a pot. Sai pot or Sai pot. Okay, they changed the B to a P, just like oftentimes you've seen Buddha spelled with a P. Putatat is how Bhikkhu Buddhadasa's name is spelled in or pronounced in Thailand, or Wat Po or Achan Po. That word Po is actually Bo for Buddha, just like the word pot is changed to pot is changed to bot. Also in Laos, they have another word for it. They call it tokbat, which means to throw it into the bowl, rather than saibat means to put it into the bowl. And these are forms of tambun, or making merit.
Also, the monks here are trying to make merit. It's not just the lay people. Monks are all about trying to make merit too. Like they rejoice in each other's merits. They always saying "Anumotana Bun," and like that's another way you can make merit is rejoicing in another's merit.
All right. I would prefer that you use the word tambun because that actually means to do good, doing good. But when you use the word merit, that gets right down magical.
That's what is going on here.
Yes, I know. I know. And that it's part of the custom so that even those students who were very, very much associated with Bhikkhu Buddhadasa, they put up with that happily. We don't go around to the ordinary people and say, oh, you're not getting any merit by doing this, because that's not true. They are getting merit. The question is when do they get the payback? Where is the results? The answer to that is obviously they get the results right then and there. That when the monks are making merit or doing tambun, they're doing good, all of the other monks rejoice in that. And they become satisfied with that. But they also kind of have in the back of their mind that magical quality that's up there in the very front for most of the lay people. And so we have to keep track in a noble way that making merit or tambun is something that we do, and we get the results right then and there. Just like the mom who gets her son to ordain, and the day of that ceremony, she's queen of town. She's the big lady. She gets really big credit for that. And in fact, I saw that same thing happening for my own mother, that all of the monks and the lay people, the Lao people and the Cambodian people, were highly, highly respective of her, that every time that she came to the temple, her coming to the temple with me, a son being ordained, that was a big deal. She was making merit, even though she was Christian. She didn't know what that was, but she did really rejoice in um, what care and a regard that people paid to her. I mean, even to the point of giving her a very, very fancy chair with its own tent, with no walls, you know, a shelter, great big umbrella kind of thing with four legs. And that's what you'll probably see for the mom. That in fact, for my ordination, Mary Patoon, which was one of the women who lived at Wat Suan Mok, and she was the one that started helping me to feed the students in the retreat. But on that day of ordination, she was very, very highly regarded by all of the lay people there. I have photos of that in my old ordination folder. And so she was a substitute for my actual mother, who was still in the United States. But then years later, when I was a monk in the United States, my mom still got that benefit, that the mother of a monk is highly regarded. And so they make merit that way, and they enjoy it that way. So you could say that that all of the good work that Mary Patoon had been doing at for the retreats and helping Achan Po and all of that came to fruit for her on my day of ordination. So she got that benefit right then and there, even though she'd been piling up that merit for many years or several years. But she did not have to wait until she died to get the benefit of that good merit making. So the ordinary people think that, well, we're going to get a double dose of it. And that's the tradition in Thailand. You know, there is a passage in the Bible that refers to Jesus, who's saying that don't pray out loud and make a big deal of it, that when you're praying, go to a closet.
Right.
So that you can build up your merit in heaven. But if you stand on the street corner and praise God dressed in fancy clothes and have a parade and making merit that way, Jesus says that all you get is the merit on that day. That you don't get any merit. So even Jesus is in that regard of the future merit is sketchy. We don't know that that's true. But it really does help if people actually firmly believe that with faith, that they will get merit in the future. That means that then they can enjoy that merit right then and there. It's sort of like someone looking at their savings account, and every time they look at it, they don't have to take the money out of the bank. They just look at their savings passbook, and they get a good feeling out of it.
Yeah.
So that's the way that it works. You don't have to take the money out of the bank. You don't have to die and wait for the bank to burn down to get your money back. Just looking at the passbook gives us great benefit. Helps us to feel safe and secure and comfortable, knowing that if we need something, it'll be there for us. All right. So now the question would be, is Tom Boone and making merit magical, or is it real? The answer to that is obviously both and neither one. But certainly it's both. certainly it's both. But it's neither one in the sense that it's all made in the mind. The example of that is looking at your bank book and relishing that you've got cash in that account. It's not the same as putting more money in the account. It's mental. We get a mental hit off of doing good. The real doing good, we're not quite so sure about. Maybe that's true, maybe it's not. Many different examples. One is that the policeman shot the bank robber and he died. But then he got into a great big lot of trouble because he didn't really have to kill the guy. And so what he thought was making merit by killing the guy actually turned out to be he got fired from his job because he killed someone who was disarmed. So we really don't know how it's going to work out in reality. But the monks there, when they are actually enjoying each other's tambun, that kind of guarantees it. No good monk is going to go tell a junior monk, oh, your merit making doesn't mean anything. I'm not going to do that because that mental component is there. That's where all the real merit comes, is in our mind. The example would be that bank book again, is that we only really feel good about the bank book and all the cash that we've saved up when we think about it. When we bring the book out and check on the balance, we're thinking about it. You can go and you can burn that book and then forget about it years later, never have a thought about it. There's no value to it. The value is in the mental state that we get into, right? So this is the reason why this topic is a little bit complicated, is because the reality may or may not be that it's good. The reality really is that it's good because we think that it's good and we gain benefit from it being good, and we think that we're going to have future in the next life. We're going to have merit stored up. And so there's a great deal of value in that because people are putting their thoughts into doing good and relishing that they're getting value out of doing good. And for that reason, highly noble monks, even the Buddha or Bhikkhu Buddhadasa or someone like that who absolutely understands the issues of magical thinking, still not just put up with it, but they promote it. There are many different kinds of ceremonies that would be kind of private. For instance, the family invites the monks to eat at their home. That can be marriage is kind of an interesting thing because monks do not do matchmaking. Monks are forbidden to do matchmaking. They do not do the ceremony of marriage. But on the night before the marriage, many monks will be invited to the family so that the family can make merit for the auspicious wedding that's the next day. The same thing is true about funerals. One story that I have is that David, one of my old friends who was a monk, he had to get a visa, and so he went to KL. And when he was in KL, he knew that there was a Thai temple. He went to the Thai temple. He stayed there for a couple of days. But when he went to meet the abbot, because every monk who goes to a wat, you have to say hello to the abbot, have to check in, right?
He was a Sri Lankan abbot, and
yeah,
David thought
the
this
story.
guy is magical, but he turned out to be actually he knew Buddhadasa.
He knew
when we'll,
Buddhadasa, so you've heard that story. Exactly. Okay, so this story shows that when the woman was in pain and grief over her dead husband, the monk handled that in a magical kind of way, but that didn't mean that the monk was stuck in his own magical thinking.
hmm,
This is one of the things that's very, very curious about Bhikkhu Buddhadasa, because he would not put up with the magical thinking. He wants to take people immediately into the super mundane and not put up with the mundane merit making. This is exactly the reason that I teach the way that I teach, is because Ajahn Po has instructed me that way. Oh, don't go for the ordinary magical beliefs and Tom Boone and power tripping and rebirth and reincarnation and all of that kind of stuff. We're going to start in the West by teaching the noble supramundane Dhamma. But that doesn't mean that I have to disrespect or put down the magical thinking. And so when people hear me talk about the supermundane, they think that I'm somehow an enemy of magical thinking. And in fact, at times I have been. But I do respect, because I have seen it so many times. The story with David, and also I've seen that with the Lao community, that we would go as monks and do funerals. We would go and do house ceremonies. That, in fact, the Cambodians are very big on this. And so when I would go to the Cambodian homes, Maha Samsak would always get out a huge number of candles. I mean, we would regularly set off smoke alarms. And if somebody had to go turn the smoke alarm off in the house because we were making so much smoke with all the candles that we were doing, that was part of the ceremony that we would refer to as Shaktipat, where he'd have a whole bunch of stuff in his bowl that would be consisting of ash and some from the candles. It would be sweet smelling stuff, rose waters, and this kind of stuff. And then he'd be out there shaking that brush to get all of that water off of it, chanting. And he knew that this was a magical ceremony, but he was really excellent at it. Everybody wanted Mahasamsak to come and do the Shaktipat ceremony at their homes, and he would happily do that to help the people make merit in their own mind. So everybody got the benefit of doing that, even though he knew that magic is in the mind, not in so much in reality.
Yeah, we had a ceremony today. It's like a funeral ceremony, and we chanted Abhidhamma, did some chanting, and it was referred to as like a merit-making ceremony, a merit-making thing for the monk. Not just for the lay people, but for the monks too.
Everybody gets merit at a funeral if you do it correctly. But crying and falling on the casket and boo-hoo, poor me, my husband's dead, is not merit making. That's wallowing in self-pity over the fact that the guy's croaked. So Buddhist ceremonies are almost always merit making, wind up being joyful. You probably heard, if this is a funeral, let's see if I can do the chant. I got part of it. Let me see if I can get it started. Anicca Vata Sankara Upattuva Yudamino Te Sabupasana Sukho. Did you hear that? That's the funeral chant. After all, I haven't been to a Buddhist funeral in 20 years, and I still remember much of that chant.
The last bit is death is the highest peace.
That's exactly right. That death is the highest peace. You don't even have to breathe anymore. You don't have to worry about anything. Let everything rot. Death is something to be looked forward to. It's a happy time. That when a monk gets really, really old, staying in that body is tough work.
Mm-hmm.
Have trouble eating, can't go to the bathroom. People have to take care of them. You've seen, in fact, I sent you that thing about the monk in Thailand who's 109. He
Right.
probably
Doesn't look too good.
doesn't look so good. I think that if I was in that state, I'd rather be dead. The last time that I saw my Upajjhaya, Kesa Thero, Sumdat Raj, he was at 107, but he was still walking around. He actually got out of his bed to greet me, which greatly
Wow.
impressed him. Greatly impressed me. He was 107. I'm sure that he didn't last much after that. Also, another monk, Achan Panyananda, when I went back to Wat Chulapatan many, many years later, Achan Panyananda was 97 at that time, and he still remembered me.
Oh.
He still remembered me. I hadn't seen him since the 1980s, and this was like 2005, something like that. And
Wow.
he still remembered me. I came to greet him, and he gave a great big belly laugh. Oh, I'm so happy to see you. You're still in the robes. So, being in the robes is in fact a way of making merit. You're making
Yeah.
merit just by being in the robes. Every day that you wake up in those robes, you're making merit that day. You're doing good.
They've told me the same thing.
I know. They grind it in. They probably also go so far as to say that you're at the highest status of Thai society, that there is only one person, the king, that is more important than you are.
No, even the king, they say that even the king has to bow to the monk.
Oh, well, that was
Even
because the old king that I had to respect, Bobby Putra, died in 2016 or thereabouts, and his son does not have near the respect that his father had. So I imagine that they've changed that we would say in the old days that only the king was higher, but now they'll probably tell you you're as good as that king.
yeah.
So is there anything else that we need to talk about with this issue of Tom Boone? Any other questions? You're making merit right now, by the way.
Oh yeah. It's true though. Like, if you hold to a high standard of morality, then that will be a cause that will lead to an effect, right? And that effect will come back in your experience.
Exactly. It'll come back mentally to you. So when you're having that experience, it's a mental experience. Like going to an ordination. That when you're in there, not only your ordination, but it's good when other young men are getting ordained for you as a monk to go to that ordination.
Right. Because then you meet other people with high standards of mind.
Mm-hmm.
Then you
That's
make
the
friends.
Sangha, exactly. Making friends in the Sangha.
Yeah, you make friends with those people, and then you have a better life in that sense.
Precisely so. You get immediate benefits. You have a holy, happy life. You're
Right.
making merit. You're Tom Boone. You're doing good, and you're getting the results of that good behavior.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. But the magical merit making is what doesn't make sense. And I just
Well,
ignored
it
that.
does. Okay, don't ignore it, but recognize that when people are making merit for the future, they're still getting benefit for it right now.
That's the good
Just,
point.
just like looking at that bank book.
Right.
Yeah, that's what we're talking about when I was mentioning that bank book. Is those people are not drawing the cash out of the bank, but they're still getting good feelings for the fact that they've stored up that merit.
Mm. Yeah, the
So
good feeling.
they get the immediate benefit. Exactly.
Even if they may not get the result of that good deed they did in the future, they still feel good at that moment.
Who knows what the future is going to be?
Mm.
And so, as a wise monk, as a noble monk, you'll recognize that you're getting the benefit right then and there for it. And who knows how much more benefit's going to come into the future? We don't know that. But we do know that what we're getting right now is good enough.
Mm. Yeah, I'm making merit right now.
Mm-hmm.
I feel good right now.
Yes. You're doing good right now. That's what the Tambun means. And it's a little shaky to call it merit making, but that's the way that we've translated Tambun. Talking about it merit in the sense that it's only in the future. And the fact is that really huge amounts of benefits are happening right now.
Mm. Excellent.
Excellent.
Yeah, that's good to think about that. Appreciate you explaining that really well. I'll have to listen to the video again, I think, to solidify that in my mind.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, why don't we finish this call now, and I'll let you go and relish in the merit that you're making.
That too, and you as well. Rejoice in all your merit.
All right.
Thank you. Okay. Take care.
We'll see you.
See you, Dhammarato.
I'm very happy for you. I'm really, really pleased that you're making all of this merit.
Likewise.
Okay, David. See you.
Okay, see you later.